Chapter 3 A Short Rest. They did not sing or tell stories that day, even though the weather improved, nor the next day, nor the day after. They had begun to feel the danger was not far away on either side. They camped under the stars, and their horses had more to eat than they had, for there was plenty of grass, but not much in their bags, even with what they had got from the trolls. One morning they forded the river at the wide, shallow place full of the noise, stones, and foam. The far bank was slippery and steep and slippery. When they got to the top of it, leading their ponies, they saw a great mountain had marched down very near to them. Already they seemed only a day's easy journey from the feet of the nearest. Dark and drear it looked, though there were patches of sunlight on its brown sides, and behind its shoulders the tips of snow peaks gleamed. "Is that the mountain?" said Bilbo in a solemn voice, looking at it with round eyes. He had never seen a thing that looked so big before. "Of course not," said Balin. "That is only the beginning of the Misty Mountains. We have got to get through, or over, or under these somehow, before we can come into wilder land beyond. And it is a deal of a way, even for the other side of them, to the lonely mountain in the east, where Smaug lies on treasure." "Oh," said Bilbo. And just in a moment he felt more tired than he had ever remembered feeling before. He was thinking once again of his comfortable chair before the fire in his favorite sitting room in his hobbit hole, and of the kettle singing, not for the last time. Now Gandalf led the way. "We must not miss the road, or we shall be done for. We need food for one thing, and a rest is a reasonable safety. Also, it is very necessary to tackle the Misty Mountain by the proper path, or else you might get lost in them, and have to come back and start at the beginning again, if you ever get back at all." They asked him where he was making for, and he answered, "We are to come to the very edge of the wild. As some of you know, hidden somewhere ahead of us is a fair valley of Rivendell, where Elrond lives in the last homely house. I sent a message by my friends, and we are expected." That sounded nice and comforting, but they had not got there yet, and it was not so easy as it sounds to find the last homely house west of the mountains. There seemed to be no trees or no valleys and no hills to break ground in front of them, only a vast slope going slowly up and up to meet the feet of the nearest mountain. A wide land that the color of heath and crumbling rock, with patches and slashes of grass green and moss green growing where water might be. Morning passed, afternoon came, but in all the silent ways there was no sign of any dwelling. They were growing anxious, for they saw now the house might be hidden almost anywhere between them and the mountain. They came on an unexpected valley, narrow with steep sides, that opened suddenly at their feet, and they looked down in surprise to see trees below them and running water at the bottom. There were gullies that they could almost leap over, but very deep with waterfalls in all of them. There were dark ravines that one could neither jump over nor climb into. There were bogs, some of them green, pleasant places to look at, with flowers growing bright, but a pony walked there with the pack on his back would never have come out again. It was indeed a much wider land from the ford to the mountains than he would ever guessed. Bilbo was astonished. The only path was marked with white stones, some of which were small and others half covered with moss or heath. Although it was very slow business following the track, even guided by Gandalf, who seemed to know his way pretty well. His head and beard wagged this way as he looked for the stones, and then followed his lead, but they seemed no nearer to the end of the search when the day began to fail. Tea time had long gone by, and it was supper time would soon be the same. There were moths fluttering about, and the light became very dim, for the moon had not risen. Bilbo's pony began to stumble over roots and stones. They came to the edge of a steep fall in the ground, and so suddenly that Gandalf's horse nearly slipped down the slope. "Here it is at last," he called. The others gathered round him and looked over the edge. They saw a valley far below, and could hear the voice of hurried water at the rocky bed at the bottom. The scent of trees was in the air, and there was a light at the valley side across. Bilbo never forgot the way they slithered and slipped in the dusk down the steep zigzag path in the secret valley of Rivendell. The air grew warmer as they got lower, and the smell of pine trees made him drowsy, so that every now and then he nodded and nearly fell off. or bumped his nose on the pony's neck. Their spirits rose as they went down and down. The trees changed to beech and oak, and there was a comfortable feeling in the twilight. The last green was almost faded out of the grass when they came at length to an open glade not far above the banks of the stream. It smells like elves," said Bilbo, and he looked at the stars. They were burning bright and blue. Just then they heard a burst of song like laughter in the trees. "Oh, what are you doing, and where are you going? Your ponies need shoeing, and the river is flowing. Oh, tra-la-la-la-la-lee, here down in the valley. Oh, what are you seeking, and where are you making? The faggots are reeking, and the bannocks are baking. Oh, trilly-lily-lily-lolly, the valley is jolly. Ha-ha. Oh, where are you going, with beards all a-wagging, not knowing, what bringing Mr. Baggins, and barlin and dwarlin down into the valley, in June. Ha-ha. Oh, will you be staying, or will you be flying? Your ponies are straying, the daylight is dying, so fly with your folly, stay with your jolly, and listen to and hark till the end of the dark, to our tune, ha-ha." So they laughed and sang in the trees, and pretty fair nonsense, I dare say you think. Not that you would care, they would only laugh at all the more you told them so. Then there were elves, of course. So Bilbo caught a glimpse of them as the darkness deepened. He loved elves, though he seldom met them. But he was a little frightened of them too. Dwarves didn't get well with them. Even decent dwarves like Thorin and his friends think them foolish, which it is very foolish to think, or get annoyed with them. So much elves tease and laugh at them, and most of them at all their beards. "Well, well," said a voice, "just look, Bilbo the Hobbit on a pony, my dear. Isn't it delicious?" Then off they went into another scene as ridiculous as the one I had written down in full. At last a tall young fellow came out of the trees and bowed to Gandalf and Thorin. "Welcome to the valley," he said. "Thank you," said Thorin a bit gruffly, but Gandalf was already off his horse and among the elves, talking merrily with them. "You are a little out of your way," said the elf. "That is, if you are making the only path across the water and to the house beyond. We will set you right, but you will best get on foot until you are over the bridge. Are you going to stay a bit and sing with us, or will you go straight on? Supper's preparing over there," he said. "I can smell the wood fires for the cooking." Tired as he was, Bilbo would have liked to stay a while. Elvish singing is not a thing to miss, and June under the stars. Not if you care for such things. Also, he would have liked a few private words with these people that seemed to know all his names and all about him, though he had never seen them before. He thought their opinion of his adventure might be interesting. Elves know a lot and are wondrous folks for news, and know what is going on among the peoples of the land, as quick as the water flows or quicker. But the dwarves were all for supper as soon as possible, just then, and would not say. On they went, leading their ponies, till they were brought a good path, and so at last to the very brink of the river. It was flowing fast and noisily, as a mountain stream do in the summer evenings, when the sun has been all day on the snow far above, and there was only a narrow bridge of stone without a parapet, as narrow as the pony could well walk on, and over they went to go, slow and careful, one by one, leading their ponies by the bridle. The elves had brought them bright lanterns to the shore, and were saying a merry song as the party went across. "Don't dip your beard in the foam, father," they cried to Thorin, who bent over almost to his hands and knees. "It's long enough without water in it." "Mind Bilbo doesn't eat all the cakes," they called. "He's got too fat to get through the keyholes yet." "Hush, hush, good people, and good night," said Gandalf, who came last. "Valleys have ears, and some elves have over-merry tongues. Good night." And so at last they all came to the last homely house, and found its doors flung wide. Now it is strange, but things are going that are good to have days that are so good to spend soon told about, and not much to listen to. While things are uncomfortable and palpitating, and even gruesome, may make a good tale, and take a good deal of telling. They stayed long in the good house, 14 days at least, and they found it hard to leave. Bilbo would have gladly stopped there for ever and ever supposing a wish that he would have taken right back to his hobbit hole without trouble. Yet there was little to tell about their stay. The master of the house was an elf friend, one of those people whose fathers came into the strange stories before the beginning of history. The wars of evil goblins and met elves and the first men of the north. In those days of our tale, There were still some people who had both elves and heroes of the north for ancestors, and Elrond, the master of the house, was their chief. He was as noble and as fair in a face as an elf lord, as strong as a warrior and as wise as a wizard, as vulnerable as a king of dwarves, and as kind as a summer. He came in many tales, but his part of the story of Bilbo's great adventure is only a small one, though important. You will see, if he ever got to the end of it. His house was perfect, whether you liked food or sleep or work or storytelling or singing or just sitting and thinking best, or a pleasant mixture of them all. Evil things did not come into the valley. I wish I had time to tell you even a few of the details of one of the 2 songs they had heard in the house. All of them, the ponies as well, grew refreshed and strong in the few days there. Their clothes were mended as well as their bruises, their tempers and their hopes. Their bags were filled with food and provisions light to carry, but strong to bring them over the mountain passes. Their plans were improved with the best advice. So the time came to the midsummer eve when they were to go on again in the early sun or midsummer morning. Elrond knew all about runes of every kind. The day he looked at the swords they had brought from the troll's lair, he said, "These are not troll-made. They are old swords, very old swords of high elves of the west, my kin. They came from Galadan and Goblin wars. They must have come from the dragon's hoard or the goblin plunder, for dragons and goblins destroyed that city many ages ago. This thorn, the rune's name Orcust, and the goblin claver and the ancient tongue of Goldalin. It was a famous blade. This Gandalf is Glamdring, full hammer of the king of Galadan once wore. Keep them well." "Whence did trolls get these, I wonder?" said Thorin, looking at the sword with new interest. "I could not say," said Elrond, "but one may guess that your trolls had plundered other plunderers, or come on the remnants of old robberies in some hold in the mountains. I have heard that there are still forgotten treasures of old to be found in the deserted caverns of mines of Moria, since the dwarf and goblin wars." Thorin pondered these words. "I will keep this sword in the honor," he said. May it soon cleave goblins once again." "I wish that is likely to be granted soon enough in the mountains," said Elrond. "But show me your map." He took it and gazed long as he shook his head, for he had not altogether approved of dwarves and their love of gold. He hated dragons and their cruel wickedness, and he grieved to remember the ruin of the town of Dale, and its merry bells, and burned banks in the bright river running. The moon was shining in the broad silver crescent. He held up the map with the white light shone with it. "What is this?" he said. "There are moon letters on it, besides the plain runes which say 5 high the door and 3 wide abreast." "What are moon letters?" asked the hobbits, full of excitement. He loved maps as well as he told before. He also liked runes and letters and cunning handwriting, though he had written himself was a little thin and spidery. "Moon letters are rune letters, but you cannot see them," said Elrond. "Not when you look straight at them. They can only be seen when the moon shines behind them. And what is more, they are more cunning sort. It must be a moon of which the same shape and season as the day when they were written. Dwarves invented them and wrote them with silver pens, as your friends can tell. They must have been written on midsummer's eves and a crescent moon, a long while ago." "What do you say?" asked Gandalf and Thorin together, a bit vexed perhaps that even Elrond should have found out first. Though really they had not had a chance before, and there should not have been another until goodness knows when. "Stand by the grey stone where the thrush knocks," said Elrond, "and the setting stone where the last light of Durin's day will shine upon the keyhole." Durin, said Thorin. "He was father of the fathers of the eldest race of dwarves and longbeards and my first ancestor. I am his heir." "Then what is Durin's day?" asked Elrond. "The first day of the dwarves' new year," said Thorin. "It is as all should know, the first day of the last moon of autumn on the threshold of winter. We still can't call it Durin's Day when the last moon of autumn and the sun are in the sky together. But this will not help us much, I fear, for it passes our skills in these days to guess when such a time will come again." "That remains to be seen," said Gandalf, "if there is any more writing." "None to be seen by this moon," said Elrond, and he gave the map back to Thorin, and then he went down to the water to see the elves dance and sing upon the midsummer's eve. The next morning was the midsummer's morning, as fair and fresh as could be dreamed. blue skies and never a cloud, and the sun dancing on the water. Now they rode again, amid the songs and farewells and good speed, with their hearts ready for more adventures, and with the knowledge of the road they must follow over the misty mountain to the land beyond.